In this video, we're going to carry on and customize the edit and view links and also the button to add a new company. So I'm going to jump back into the builder. I'm on my companies page and this is my grid of the companies table. So I need to target the edit company column or the company field. And if I click on the label, I can either click on the label or click on the pencil to edit a column. So if I come to the other one, I need to click on the pencil or click on the column and it will bring up in the left hand side the column properties. Now working down from the top you have a header, and this here says edit company. This is what this column's called, and I actually don't want to have the word company because it makes the column a bit wider than I would like. So now I've just changed that to edit. You can see here that the link text says edit. This is what would be inside the button. So if I said edit this, you'll see that it's updated what the button text is. But you'll notice in the button it's in uppercase and in the link text it's in lowercase. The reason for that is in the live app design, when I set what an edit link looks like, it was always going to be blue with white text and uppercase. So that will override this setting here. So it can be upper or lowercase in this link text. You can also once again add an icon if you wanted to add an icon to this link. So for instance, I could add an edit link and you'll see that shown here, and in this case I don't want to add an icon. I'm going to scroll down a bit further. Display rules we will cover later. I'm going to look at the column widths. So Knack has two ways you can interact with columns, either default, which will leave it up to Knack to decide on how wide the column is, and it will be responsive to how many columns you have on your view, and it will auto fit the column best it can based on the information that's in that column. Now often if I just go back to my live app, you can see that this column is kind of this wide, and there's a lot of blank space here which I don't really like or really want. So I'm going to force it to be a custom width. So if I select custom, its default is 50 pixels, and you can change this to a percentage. I don't think personally I've ever used a percentage. This would be how much of a percentage of this whole table is this column width. I tend to only use pixels, and in this particular case I just stay with 50 pixels. Now 50 pixels is very, very tiny, and there isn't any way that this column could only be 50 pixels wide. But because Knack's responsive, how this works is it will try and get the column down to 50 pixels. In other words, it will constrain it as much as possible, and it will be constrained by two things: either what's in the column itself in terms of if there's an address, how long the address is, or how wide the column label is, the actual header. So that's why I removed the word company from the edit company. So this will just make it kind of shrink to fit, and then I want to align it to the center. I'm going to do the same on the company details. I'm just going to change this from company details to view, and I'm going to do a custom and center and save. Come back to my live app and do a refresh, and you will now see that the edit and view links look much neater in my opinion and taken up less space on your live app. There's one thing I also like to do is differentiate between links in terms of colors. So I like my edit links to be green because it's effectively an action. So I'm going to go back into the builder, and I could have done this while I was here, but I forgot. So I'm going to go back into the edit by clicking on the column heading, and down the bottom there's a link design section. It's quite light, but there is a toggle there. If I click on that, it enables this section. And now I have a whole host of different things I can do with this link. So it's already filled in as a fill. The button is set to small. It has a white with a blue button, and it's picking this up from the live app design of how we set up buttons globally. But now I can override this completely. I could either take it back to legacy, and legacy is how this was before we had this feature, and as you can see in the live app it's now just a text with an underline. I can take it to just being text only, which now at the moment I have white text. So if I just take it to a different color, you can see now I've got red text. I tend to use either outline. So on outline, if I change the text color to something other than white, you can now see I've got text with a blue outline. But in this case, I'm just going to stay with the fill, and I'm just simply going to change the color to green. So there's lots of different things you can play around with here, but I'm just going to simply change it to a standard green. I could also do the same with the menu button, but this is set as a standard color. But I'm actually going to go back into the settings and into live app design and into the menus section. Before we were in the view links. I'm going to go into the menus section, and there's two sections. There's buttons and tabs, and it's here, the button menu. This is what we've created for that button to add a new record. It's on a button menu. Tab menus are something slightly different, which we'll get into. So on the button menu, I would like this to be a standard color of being green. So I'm just going to use a custom color. This is very similar to how we set up the links. So I'm not going to customize anything more than that. I might make the button slightly smaller. I'll just stay with medium. Medium's fine. And the other options for uppercase, round corners, raise, which is kind of a drop shadow, I might leave the drop shadow on. So I'm going to save that. And this is setting a menu button globally. So every time a menu is added, it will have a green button. If I go back to my live app and do a refresh, you can now see that I have a green button to add a company. So if I go back into the pages section, you can now see also that it's shown here as a green button. If I wanted to, I could click onto here and click onto the button, and then I can actually do an override on this particular button and change this specific instance to a different color. But every time I add a button to a menu, it will now be green. Whilst we're updating the live app design, there's one other section I'd like to show you about grids. If you go to settings and live app design and then onto grids, you can affect how the grid looks. So this is the grid preview here, and this is currently set up to have a clean look, but I can add borders to this. You can have an alternate background on your rows, so it goes light grey and white. You can have a hover over, and you can also change the line spacing. It's currently set to default. You can have them slightly wider. I prefer to have them slightly narrower. So I'm just going to save that. Come back to my live app and do a refresh. And you can now see that I've got a very subtle outlined table with alternate grey rows. In the next video, we will be looking at the edit page and the view page.